Welcome to today's panelist discussion brought to you by PromoRepublic. I'm really excited today. We have a really great team to discuss how to uncover growth opportunities for your locations. So to introduce myself and to actually just dive right in here, because we're about 2 minutes past the hour. My name is Raakkel Sims, and I run our customer success and partnerships department here at PromoRepublic. So my day in and day out is working directly with franchisors and franchisees to grow their brands on social and the entire local digital marketing ecosystem. So that's what I do. And I'm really excited to moderate today because we have 4 power hitters in the franchise marketing space, specializing obviously in marketing for today. So to introduce our first speaker, we have Larisa Walega.
Hi, yep. Thanks for having me again. My name is Larisa Walega. I'm the Vice President of Marketing for Ziebart International Corporation. We are the #1 automotive aftermarket and appearance franchise brand, servicing 400 locations, 1,200 processing centers in 36 countries. We love to help people bring back that new car feeling into their life. Your vehicle is your second biggest investment, so it's a great time for us right now, given different opportunities that are happening within the automotive space. So excited to be here and share with my fellow panelists.
Yeah, thank you for participating today. I'm really excited to learn more about that. My family's in the auto space, so I know exactly what you're going through.
Absolutely.
And also wanted to welcome Madeleine Park. Welcome today.
Hi, thanks for having me. Yeah, I am the Director of Marketing at Netsertive. Currently, we are a technology advertising company that works with franchises to localize their marketing. I'm also a multi-unit, multi-brand owner and CMO. We've got about 15 to 20 locations across 3 brands in the Philly area. And previous to my role at Netsertive, I was the Director of Marketing at Threshold. We have about 8 service brands at the time, so everything from primarily Fran Dev and then helping with the consumer. And also have a pretty popular podcast called The Art of Franchise Marketing, so check that out. We dive into a whole bunch of different brands and talk about what's working and what's not in the space today.
Very cool. Love a good podcast. I'll be definitely checking that out. I like obsessively listen to them, so that's really cool. And also wanted to welcome Shana and Krisan. How are you today?
Great, and that is the closest anybody ever comes. That was so good. I'm Shana Krisan. I'm the Vice President of Marketing here at Goldfish Swim School. We are a learn to swim provider, a premier learn to swim provider for kids between the ages of 4 months and 12 years old. We currently have 129 locations across 32 states. 129th actually opens today. And I am very excited to be here with you.
Oh,
and my kids go, and it is phenomenal. Everything she said, they live up to it. So
great testimonial.
Yeah, I learned to swim at a swim school, and then I went on to be like a D1, or not D1, definitely not D1, but varsity swimmer. So I love the swim schools. I think it's really great.
Great. Glad to hear it.
Yeah. And then our final panelist today is Scott Moellenkamp. Can you hear us, Scott?
Hi, yeah, I'm here.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you. I work at Bathfitter. Used to work for ABC Seamless, national company for about 14 years. Work with a lot of franchising, development, etc. And then kind of went into business with a good friend of mine over the years. You know, I've been kind of communicating with him over the last 10 years, and it's been great. We've gelled together, and now we're kind of running the stores in Minnesota, North Dakota, and Wisconsin. So it's been very exciting. And then there's a motto we live by at Bathfitter: don't get it right, or don't be right, get it right. It embodies the spirit of continual improvement. And I just want to make sure I threw that out there before we started here. So
I love that motto. And I think getting it right is really important, because that's what we're trying to do on the daily basis within the marketing vertical for the franchise brands that we're all a part of and work with. So I think a really great place to start with our first question today, which is how the marketing space, specifically with the franchise space, has evolved from 10 years ago to now. So I'd love to hear each of your experiences in the franchise space, specifically in marketing. What maybe were you used to do and used to be successful versus what you're doing now? Because I know even in the past 3 years, the marketing space has digitized and changed completely. So going back even further, I would love to hear. Shana, can you start us off?
Yeah, I would be glad to. Yeah, I've been in marketing for a lot of years, and particularly in franchise marketing for about 20, 25 years. And it's changed so very much. And I think that the way that I really look at it is it's changed for not just marketers, but in 3 very distinct ways: consumers, franchisees, and then business expectations for marketers. So from a consumer expectation perspective, it's really just, it's not enough just to tell people what you do and provide an appealing offer anymore. Gone are the days of advertising at people. Consumers are not a one size fits all, and they really want companies that they do business with to understand them and provide them with not just a product, but an authentic why behind it. So why is it important to me? How does it fit into my life? How will it improve my life? There's so many choices that we're giving them, and that everybody has. I don't think that brand loyalty is actually dead, as some people say, but I do think that brands have to step up their games and put consumers at the center of their messaging. It's all about that authenticity and empathy-based marketing and customized messaging that sells not just a product, but an experience. And then for the franchisees, 10 years ago, they could create a really great integrated marketing plan with just a few channels and choices. If they targeted to their demographic, they could pretty much nail it. But today they not only have an expansive list of paid and owned and earned channels into consideration, they actually have, as you mentioned, digital and social. So alone, those have evolved faster than any marketer can possibly keep up with. And that means that consumers are splintering their attention, which means marketers and franchisees have to dig in even deeper and understand the consumer and specific products and channels to know not only where to be, but to understand the variables and the customizations within each of those channels so that we can really target and customize our messages to them. And then from a business perspective, to be able to unequivocally tell our brands where to put the money that will create the biggest bang for the bucks, right? So we have all those channels and opportunities as well, and we need to be able to figure out where to put our money, and then to seamlessly integrate all those channels, monitor the performance and optimize at all times, and to have real-time data that can point us to the issues and successes readily available. So there's different markets, there's different audiences, and really marketing has changed so much that we have to understand all of those in different ways.
I was muted. That was a really great point. And I think you hit the nail on the head. What people are craving now more than ever is the authenticity and the emotion of the consumer first. And I think we really initially saw that stripped back from superficial marketing, so to speak, to more organic, really at the start of the pandemic, when everyone across every industry across the board was just going through it. And that's really what changed that shift that we've seen working with our franchise brands. Madeleine, how would you say the 10 years has shifted?
Yeah, I mean, definitely going off of that. I mean, Shana hit it right on the head. I think, more in the home services, especially as a franchisee currently, and also, on the franchisor side, 10 years ago, it was much easier to predict, okay, I'm going to send out a direct mailer, I'm going to spend X amount of money, and I'm going to get clients for X amount of dollars. And that was pretty consistent over time. It wasn't too long ago that people were not buying anything off of social for sure. And slowly the trend started with, okay, I'm going to buy stuff, but it's really cheap stuff. And now I'm buying, smaller items, clothing and appliances or smaller appliances. And now it's kind of gradually getting a little bit bigger to services and cars. And I'm sure it'll shift eventually to real estate. And, as we get into the business sector, FranDev is definitely pushing there. So trying to keep up with that. And then I would also say, there's just much more emphasis around brand awareness because you are more vastly aware of all of the different options you have. You have the ability to vet everyone and easy access to friends and networks on if they should buy or not, where before it was kind of, you know, what direct mailers do you have in front of you, what trucks do you see going by, who's your neighbor using, and those are your options. Now it's kind of endless. So there's definitely a bigger emphasis on the less transactional channels such as social media. And I'd also say, you know, the big difference is all in education as well. As you know, we're having to constantly educate, whether it's candidates or consumers, or ourselves internally about, you know, what's working, how do we keep up with it, how do we automate it, without, you know, dropping a ball, which can be pretty tricky. And then especially when it comes to, you know, attributing ROI, there's a lot more that goes into it, and definitely takes more of those expert partnerships and vendors and internal teams. And I could definitely see it. It's definitely more of a struggle for franchisees as well, because it's just not as streamlined.
Absolutely. Larisa, would you add your flavor?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, you know, something that we're seeing that's super important to keep a pulse on is that positioning, which is nothing new, but the positioning of your brand is really important and makes you different than anybody else in your space. And it's really always been important to us to stay on top of that as much as possible. So perhaps in the heyday where we did our consumer research and really understood what was important to them, and then kind of maybe set it and forget it, it's changing so rapidly that investing in consumer research and into really where your brand is positioned, where that important connection plays for consumers, I think has to be a little bit more real time than what it used to be as well. I also think that just one other point, and I agree with everything that Shana and Madeleine said too, but one other angle to think about too is the customer journey. It was really important to us coming out of a major brand relaunch to develop that ideal retail customer journey and decide not only what messaging makes sense at not only what those steps are, what the order of them are, but what makes sense from a messaging standpoint, as well as how are we measuring each of those steps and making the best opportunity for our franchise owners to move our ideal consumers down that funnel and into building a lifelong relationship. And that takes investment in technology, that takes investment in content generation. So I think that thinking about where marketing and the marketing team plays a role in customer experience is also something that's very different from 10 years ago too, and helps make that connection.
That's a really great point. I know everyone is familiar with the customer journey, but really going back to basics, whether it is a rebrand or maybe you're taking a look at how to invest in your marketing stack right now, which we'll get into a little bit later, but mapping that out and seeing what you think the customer journey is and that reality is a really big part of how to navigate this ecosystem right now. How's it been for you, Scott? What would you say your past 10 years have been and versus what you're looking at right now in the digital marketing side of things?
Very simplified, paper versus digital content. That's as simple as I can put it right away. Brand awareness, as you guys mentioned, all of you, I think. Testimonials by customers on Google. You go to Google now, you're like, hey, I'm gonna go get the Pizza Hut on 45th Avenue. It's 4.7 stars, but on 32nd Avenue is 3.2 stars. Why? Why is that? It's social presence. However, it might not be all social medias combined for each of your businesses, but right now, art. Trying to create it the way that you want to create it to cater to the customer experience, as I think Larisa said, and I think you all said, the customer experience overall is how we're driving business nowadays. It's not how we cater to ourselves, it's how we cater to everybody else that's buying from us. So it's trying to figure out expectations of the new consumer now versus going to JCPenney and getting 70% off on a dress because it says 70% off. It's not like that. We all are aware of the game now. So it's more catering to what the customer wants. And I think that's how we have to play it.
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head and saying everything that we all said in or like 3 words: paper versus digital. And that is absolutely true. And I think each one of our panelists today really highlighted the differences between the past decade and how that evolved, whether it was paper versus digital, or the fact that everyone now has more things to monitor and to check where the ROI is coming from, and focusing on the positioning of the brands nowadays and evoking that empathy and customer centric view. So I think that is the key takeaways that I've observed from each one of our panelists today, and I think really important points to take forward into 2022. And that brings us to our next question for the panelists, which is, where is your marketing budget going for 2022? I know we're about a quarter in, but we'd love to hear how you're allocating that. And also, how are you managing to stay ahead of the trends? Because our previous question focused on the quick changes that we've seen. So now I think it's really interesting to see how you're predicting what the trends are and where your marketing budget's going. Larisa, would you like to start us off here?
Sure, no problem. We know when we think about budgeting, and there's no one size fits all for every brand, right? So it's really about where your brand evolution is at this point, whether emerging, we're a legacy. I should have mentioned that earlier. We're a 60-plus-year-old brand, so we're much different sometimes than other franchise brands that are out there. But when we think about budget development, it really, quite honestly, boils back down to that customer journey and what our goals for our brand is at that point. Are there places where we can optimize against the typical marketing funnel, right, of awareness and consideration and that research opportunity to really driving leads? Those are the three things that we'll get into later and how we measure those. But when we're looking at all three and saying, where's really the opportunity for Ziebart, our brand, to make some options for change, that's how we think about planning in terms of strategy. And so when we look at those line items right now within that budget, it's heavily focused on digital. We spent a great deal of time after that journey was authored that I mentioned, kind of taking a step back and saying, let's make sure we have the right information, the right content, the right education, where if somebody's coming to our website, there's rich content, creative. That's certainly something that we spend a great deal of money on too, in terms of content generation, both educational, writing, videos, photo shoots. We're making sure that everything is really up to speed and where it should be. And then peeling back from the customer journey and talking about where that consumer might spend their time researching and getting to know our brand a little bit more to see if that's a place that they want to invest their time, effort, and money. So building a lot in the digital space around all those components, from pay-per-click to local listing optimization and review tracking, to obviously local SEO, national SEO, and we talked about our website too. So I would certainly say that probably a third to near half of our budget is digital at this point. And then we focus on other areas as well.
I think we see digital becoming in a bigger and bigger chunk of the pie across the board, but obviously based on what we discussed in that shift to digital from paper. I still love that line, 3 words or less, to describe the trend changing. Madeleine, how's it been for you? What's your marketing budget looking like this year?
Yeah, I mean, the majority of it is going to digital, and obviously this is going to vary based on industry. We're in home services, so that is still paper and direct mail still works well for us, whereas certain industries it's not going to. So there is just a different balance of where the spend is going. But really, I think it's, aside from being digital, it's making sure that the education and the goal setting surrounding your ultimate bottom line is aligned. So I think it's very easy, especially if it's consumer or brand dev, to say, oh, social media doesn't work, this is how much I put in, I cannot attribute any leads that came out of it, the ROI is low. However, you're holding a channel accountable for something that it's not able to reach. So then you're saying, I'm not going to do it, it's not important. when in reality, it's still a, you know, piece of the puzzle. And it's just saying, nope, we are using social media for brand awareness and we need to get traffic and clicks. From that, we now are ensuring that, yes, the creative is good. You know, customers are seeing us early on in the funnel. So now they're getting to the next stage. And what I like to say here with digital is, you know, look for the life rafts, meaning you can get every report and every number at any moment on any dashboard everywhere. It's a sea of numbers, and ultimately you just need to look for the life rafts, meaning, you know, we're not making enough money, we're not getting enough customers. Well, from the top of the funnel, if your traffic is low, then you don't have people going to your site, so you need to fix that. If your conversion rate is low, then your creative needs to be tested, you know, that sort of thing. So, you know, looking at your cost per lead, your cost per click, your traffic, you know, those big things, and then kind of working from the top down. So yes, the budget is mostly digital. Within digital, we've got all of the major outlets. But I think as 2022 moves on, it's now about fine tuning those digital avenues and making sure, one, we're holding them accountable to goals that they can actually reach. And two, ensuring that this is not just a fail fast, it's not working, I'm never going to do it again. It's maneuvering the channel so that it works for your business, because ultimately you need to be where people are, and this is where people are. I like to use the metaphor, you know, if you put a toy in Toys R Us and don't tell anyone about it, what are the chances that someone's going to buy it? Probably pretty low. If you do that and then do all your marketing channels, your social media, your CTV, your banners, all of this, chances are kids are going to see that and go right to that aisle. So, you know, making sure that, you know, you're visible in ways that might not directly affect your bottom line, but understanding what channel's transactional and what's not, so that it can all work together.
I definitely agree with that. And I think I like your analogy as well about the life rafts, having your KPIs that are your anchors that you're checking constantly to make sure that it's working, or if not, what levers are you changing to make it work for you? I think that's a really great piece of advice, because you're right, there's just endless amounts of data out there. So really holding on to core KPIs are really important. Scott, what is 22 looking like for you? Or what trends are you seeing?
You know, big one is, you guys have heard of Grant Cardone. He's omnipresent, which is, what is that? Quality of being everywhere, right? You try to be everywhere at one time, and that's kind of what our goal is, to try to be everywhere and not spread too thin, but try to make an impact in each community. We're pretty easy going here in Minnesota and North Dakota, so we try to get to trade shows and events to visit with people and figure out what their pain points are, you know. So you know, going to something as simple as the winter show, which is a rodeo in Valley City, North Dakota, and then jumping out to well, now it's what is that, where do they play the Vikings at now? that's where we're at a couple weeks ago, and really turned out really nice. We got about 139 leads. Wow. In that event, and it's just trying to be everywhere at once, as efficient as possible. I think efficiency is a very key point. You got to concern yourself with how much does it cost to be in this event. Digitally, you're talking about OTT, which is smart TV, and geofencing different competitors, and you're talking about throwing digital ads out there for hiring, because hiring is a huge key point too, which is marketing as well. That's part of that. So you're trying to visit with people, you're trying to get them to understand what your brand awareness is. You're trying to get them to understand what is available in the market of what you're selling to someone that would work for your company too. So I think that's a huge part of it as well. I'm just going to mention quick, how do we get people involved? How do we get people over to interview for our positions at our companies? And we deal with a lot of installations. I'm not sure if you guys do as well, but I think that's a huge point, is trying to get people involved, which is another hot point here, is culture. We all have great cultures to work for, but somebody else can go somewhere else for $1 extra an hour and say, hey, see you later. So how do we keep those people in our company and make sure that we're able to do a job that we need to get done to make sure that we're, profitable as companies? I mean, that's about all I have.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think you touched on this a little bit earlier, but what's right for your industry? I know you're obviously in bath fitting, so going in physically in person and getting a lot of leads from that. You said 139 from an in-person event is clearly one way to allocate that marketing budget, whereas digital is a smaller component, whereas on other industries, it would be that larger piece of the pie. So I think that's a really great reminder as well. Shana, how is it 22 looking like for you, and what trends are you trying to stay ahead of?
So unlike some of the rest of you, we are a perpetual membership-based model. So it's less about the return or second or third visit. It's more about keeping people in the loyalty and showing them the golden experience, as we say. So customer experience is something that we're always really focusing on. Which is more than customer service, it's customer experience. And I think that that is what consumers are really looking for right now. So you talked about the empathy-based, authentic marketing, the customer journey, the funnel. Brand awareness plays such an important piece in this, as has been mentioned, but for our franchisees, really getting them the understanding of the important place that branding plays, to help them to spend their local dollars more efficiently and effectively is something that we've really put a lot of concentration on this last couple of years. And so that is definitely OTT. We're looking at some traditional models like television, like direct mail. So we're looking at OTT, connected mail, some of those other additional opportunities. And then just being smart about our video, our photos, video for our type of a brand. Showing off our facilities really helps to sell us through. So definitely digital, all of everything everybody said, but it has to be in an integrated way. There isn't one thing that is going to work. It's the integration of all of this, which makes it all that much more complicated, right? So, but being able to pull it all together, use the same photography with different strategies on different channels is the goal. And I think that that's really what's kind of netting us some gains here.
Yeah, that's great. And I think my takeaway from focusing on where the marketing budget's going is that it's not the same for everyone. It's completely different industry to industry, depending on where you are, whether you're an in-person type of service or loyalty-based model, as you said. But I think the commonalities are that there are key elements where you want to dedicate, whether that is digital, direct mail, TV, and so on. And you want to focus on that consumer experience. That is my takeaway. And I did, Scott, another one-liner. I have quality of being everywhere written down and underlined in my notes here. So I think those are what I'm seeing and hearing from each one of you for 2022. So I think that's really important to keep in mind. Madeleine, I want to start with you for this next question, just because you did speak about looking for different life wraps. And our third question is going to focus about the metrics that you're looking to track and optimize for local growth. So I'd love to pass the microphone to you so you can speak to this a little bit more.
Yeah, so I think that the most important thing is if you're tracking your local marketing, make sure your marketing's local. So I think a lot of franchisees get stuck in I'm a franchise, I'm just going to use the 1-800 number. I'll just use what they gave us. I'll rely on the National Advertising Fund. And, while that may touch the surface, it's not going to hit the homes of your local community. So, ensuring that your marketing is localized so that you can track it properly is important. And by localized, I mean, you're using your local phone number, you have your address, you have your local webpage, because that matters to people. A lot of people want to call a local number, not an 800 number. It's that constant battle between small business franchise owners and, franchise corporations. It's similar to what you're just looking at overall. So you want to look at, how many people are you reaching? So typically traffic and impressions, who's engaging with you. And while that's on a lower level, all of that contributes to, the biggest KPI is with your cost per lead, your cost per click, your cost per lead. Your franchisor is going to give you a baseline of what you should see. And then obviously you want to stay within that or try to lower it. If you're seeing a cost per lead that's higher than average, then you want to work with your franchisor to dig into, why is that happening? And then, also on your local level, you want to look into, and it differs, as Shana said, depending on a membership model or not, but how how much is a client or a customer worth to you in the long run? How long are they worth if you keep them on? So then attributing that back to how many are you getting per month? What is your attribute? What is your attrition? You want to make sure your attrition is on the lower end. While turnover is good, you certainly don't want that leaky bucket to be leaking faster than you are filling it up. So, all in all, you're definitely looking at traffic, your cost per lead, your conversion rate, and then how much a client is worth and how long they're staying on.
Absolutely. Really, really great metrics to keep track of. And I think one important thing that you did raise is make sure the marketing is local, because the trend now is to shop local. Not only do we see that in our local communities, but we see that with Google's trends and their focus on hyper local everything that they're doing. And at the end of the day, franchisees are part of that local ecosystem because they are a pillar in the community. They're not that giant corporation. They buy into a franchise because they trust and believe in the system that you've already built out, but they're still that local piece. So I think highlighting that, sharing that, adding local touches to whether that's a quick local vernacular change in copy of things or little things like that really make the difference. So that's a really, really great point. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
Shana, what KPIs are you tracking to make sure that the organization's growing?
We track an awful lot of stuff. So we definitely, from an operational perspective, have a scorecard that we look at, but I'm going to speak to just the marketing. So we have a general business scorecard that we look at, and then we have a separate marketing scorecard that allows us to dig in a little bit deeper. We do have a marketing consultant support team. So we have each school has a consultant that's dedicated to helping to support them. So what they look at is, from a membership-based model, not only the leads that are generated and the conversion of those leads, but also the attrition. So we can drive leads. They can put all their time and money and energy and effort into getting those leads through the door and converting them. That's the hard part, right? Keeping them is equally important. And really that's where you can really get some gains without having to spend all the time, energy, and money. So I would say understanding the front door and back door for membership, leads to conversion ratio, most certainly. I think break even is really important to understand for the franchisees, to make sure that they know what their goals and objectives are, so that then we can help consult and help them meet those goals through the different marketing and integrated program that we have. Consumer engagement. So not just likes on social media, but actual engagement on social media. That is much more telling than using a great meme that we create here at the home office and we give to them and they throw up there. Making it local, making sure that they're speaking to their consumer, because as great as Goldfish is, Goldfish in their community is what their community is looking for. They're not looking for the 129 of us. They're looking for the one that's in their community. So they want to see that they're invested in. We have a lot of programs and opportunities to reach out and talk about water safety and really showcase what we do and being a big part, and then looking at what that engagement is and show how that reaps benefits there is really important. So review generation, open rates on your emails, your net promoter scores. That's so important. Even that's not just an operational number. That's a number that we look at from a marketing perspective too. What can we glean from that then we can go back and help support through different programs and marketing that we have available.
And that's a really great point. I know we focused a lot on like the digital side, and which encompasses social, of course, and that local listings reviews, but also email is a big portion of that we haven't dedicated a lot to today, but that's a really important piece of the overall puzzle. And NPS, that is also, I think, industry agnostic to utilize. So I think those are really interesting points to bring to the table. Larisa, what are your key metrics that you're focusing on? Because I know in the automotive space, it's a little bit different.
So our brand, we're really focusing on driving that new customer. We see, a strong balance between driving new customers and family to our brand, but also the idea of retention too. Our model is most of our services, you can only get on your vehicle once, except detailing or cleaning. So Once you've gotten it, a few of them have an annual maintenance, but otherwise you got it. So, customer experience really plays into that in terms of once you're ready to get that new vehicle, we want to make sure that you come back and that we can help you preserve its lifetime value and make it look like new for as long as you own it. I won't echo what everybody else already said. We do all of the same things too, but I will just mention again from a different perspective. I can't emphasize enough how much we build our metrics and what we track based on our customer journey. So, in marketing, we're focusing on driving awareness. We're focusing on driving down that funnel into consideration research. And then we're hoping that that consumer will choose to do business with us versus another local competitor. So every metric that we look at, and we look at a lot too, boils down into one of those three places. And then we're mirroring and taking a look at conversion, obviously, from the leads too, into what's happening in terms of driving a second visit where we can, driving a cross-sell opportunity perhaps into another service line. So how can we continue to not only help that franchise owner build a lifetime value with that consumer, but also build that relationship with that consumer and really give them the services that they need and when they need it. It's interesting in automotive how age does play a certain card or difference in terms of the messaging and what we're saying to some of our consumers, but also life stage does too. We see a natural progression from perhaps the really cool kid that comes in his late teens or early 20s and wants to start with window tint. And then 10 years later, he's like, I need that detailing because I'm bringing home my first kid. It's just this whole different change. So we really spend a lot of time and effort understanding how life stage impacts our customers too, and how we can build that relationship across that. So like I said, I won't echo, we do all those metrics too, and then we dive down even further into marketing analytics within each program and tactic that we utilize, but it really just always boils back down to the customer journey.
Really great point. And I like that that's the commonality in the thread about that customer journey, because once you understand that, a lot branches off, as I'm sure people are noticing today, since it's coming up time and time again. So it's a really great point. Thank you for sharing. And rounding up the KPI discussion, I'm going to pass it to you, Scott. What are you focusing on in terms of the metrics that you're tracking for this year or in general?
So all the good answers have been taken already. But here's the thing. Now, I'm involved in sales and marketing, but I think sales and marketing are pretty much the same. So overall, we're looking for a net dollars per sale, per lead issued at a good rate, enough to where we are efficient as a company, where we can actually make profitability. So that's the most important thing to us. It's not the most important thing. I mean, our customers are the most important thing, and our employees are the most important thing. But in order to stay in business, you need to make sure that your metrics are in shape. So like all you guys are saying, all this stuff, this is fantastic. We know what we need to get done to make sure our jobs are still there and make sure that we're still profitable as companies. So the biggest thing I guess I can mention that might differ from the rest of you guys is making sure that marketing metrics to track and optimize for local growth. Make sure everybody's satisfied. Make sure your employees are happy. That's a hard thing to say, but it's part of it. Because if your employees aren't happy, they're not going to market your company. They're not going to tell their uncle, hey, come buy from us. They're not going to say, hey, second cousin, come get some windows or come get a bath. It's just, it all trickles down on influence. And that's the biggest part I'll bring into this conversation, is just making sure you influence everybody around you the best way you can. And that's what I have to add to that, because I think marketing is influence. How can you influence other people? How can you influence people the right way?
That's a really great point. I think you're right. We did talk a lot about the customer journey and mapping the customer, but we also in marketing have internal and external stakeholders And by that, we mean, our internal teams and the franchisees, as well as everyone else at the home offices, and external, the customers, the potential leads that you're having. So it is those two prongs. So that's really great insight, Scott. I think overall, my takeaway here, to consolidate what everyone has shared, without regurgitating the same KPIs, is that the franchisor has baseline metrics that they can share with the franchisees that they can look up to and see if they're staying in line, and if not, make those small changes to grow to them. You can tailor the communications to local and hyper local. That's my favorite. I've underlined that, Madeleine. And then that conversion to leads, and from leads to loyalty. I think all of that is really important to keep in mind. So thank you all for sharing this. I think this is a really great point, just because as you've said today, there's so many metrics you can see, there's so many dashboards you can put together, but really stripping it back and keep focusing on these key areas is what's really important. So thank you for sharing that. Scott, I'd love to hear from you, because I know you discussed about that loyalty that you want to create, not only within the customer, but internally. What does a return on investment look like for you and within your brand?
That's a very tough question, but I'm glad I get to answer this one first. So return on investment of brand awareness activities would be basically, once again, being omnipresent, right? We already used that word. It's being everywhere at one time. Mm-hmm. So like with us right now, our one of our red points, negative points, would be trying to communicate to people that want to work for your business. So how do you do that? Now this is a marketing question, but this is marketing to people. In order to run your organization, you need to market to people, right? So our goal is to, honestly, going to schools, trying to educate people that, hey, you don't have to go to college in order to have a good career. You're going to make, honestly, well, I'll just say we make between first year 60 to 80 grand as an installer right away. Is that a good career? Now, no one can take away from that, right? Hey, this is what I want to do. So our goal is to try to cater a sales and marketing campaign directly towards those people. So that's the marketing ROI that I can think of right now that we need to do, because otherwise we can't be in business. Like right now, I know companies, Renewal by Anderson, they're out a year and a half on installations. How do you stay in business if you can't have cash flow? So that's the biggest thing here, is like, we can talk about getting consumers, getting leads. There's always going to be that need. There's always going to be people that want cars, bathtubs, showers, siding, all that jazz. But here's the thing, I think the biggest concern for us to do is to market to people right now. Market to people that want to work for your organization, market to people that want to build something more. And that's the thing, is like, it's hard to do that nowadays. A lot of people like to go in and punch in at 9 and punch out at 5. Okay. How about those people that want to work a little harder to make sure that we get things done? That's what I can add to that, I guess. So.
Absolutely. I think finding the right team is a really integral part to any organization to be successful long-term. So I definitely echo that sentiment. Shana, what about ROI? What is that? How are you measuring that right now? Because I know, as we said time and time again, a lot of metrics to focus on. So this is an interesting question.
So many metrics to focus on, and brand awareness is definitely the most difficult to track. But I think the question on should you? Yeah, of course you should. You should try to track anything and everything you can. But I do think, and I say this all the time, probably ad nauseum to our franchisees, marketing is art and science. And the science part of it is the tracking, right? I want you to track everything you possibly can. It is a jumping off point to understand where some maybe issues are coming in, or opportunities are coming in, but you cannot ignore the science part of it, the understanding of the variables market by market that are different. So you have to understand the competitive differences. You have to understand the vintage differences of a school. You have to understand the demographic differences, the sightline differences. If you don't combine what you know from your data to what you also understand as a marketer, you're not going to have the best solution. So when you're trying to look at brand awareness, there are things. So yes, I think sorry, that was a diatribe, but yes, you should try to track it. I think there are some things that are easier to track, like calls to action, by adding calls to actions that can drive to a landing page, for example. So if you're doing a campaign that's really brand awareness focused, you can drive it to a landing page. You can monitor website traffic. You can use promotion codes and integration into common dashboards so that you can monitor. You can look at things year over year. So if you're doing all of that and your numbers are going up and nothing else is changing year over year, then you know that your brand awareness is doing something. It is hard to quantify. I will say that our website traffic, for example, has gone up about 55% in the last 4 years. So when I look at everything else we're doing, and yes, we're adding onto our tech stack and we're doing more in marketing, but I know our branding is working there. Same with our share of voice. Our share of voice is up about 30% over the last 4 years. That is absolutely due to branding and not just promotional advertising and marketing. So it's the integrated model, again, of both of them and understanding how it works, the data, the information, the science of it, married with the art of understanding how to put it all together and react to it.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. I think really underscoring that it is branding and putting the version of the brand out there, not just promotion, is the key difference here, and really pushing that to all of the channels that you highlighted and how you're tracking that. And the growth that you've seen in your website in 4 years is a true testament to that ethos. So congratulations on that. That's huge. Yeah. And Madeleine, what about you? How are you calculating that ROI aspect?
Yeah, I mean, another one of my, infamous metaphors is if you're you're always getting that pushback of, I don't have time to go on social media. I don't want to post on that, or they're just not doing that. I said, look, your digital footprint, your digital presence, that is you, especially if you don't have a brick and mortar. That is how you're presenting yourself online is how people are meeting you. I know we tell franchisees all the time, go out, kiss some babies, shake some hands, but the amount of people you're reaching digitally versus actually doing that is exponential. So, if you're not doing that brand awareness activity, that's like walking by a store on the street with their lights turned off. And you're like, oh, well, I was going to maybe check that out sometime, but I won't now. Doesn't look like they're open. Versus you're walking by a store, the lights are on, people are tinkering about, that impression makes a difference. So I think the psychology of it is people need to see you 6 or 7 times before they say yes. So if you're not willing to put in that effort for those 6 or 7 times, and you're just, assuming you're going to get a yes on the first ad, you're either paying an extraordinarily amount for that conversion, or you're going to see, and you will see, very low quantities. So again, to, how I answered kind of one of the first or second questions was, holding your brand awareness activities to goals that are attainable, meaning traffic, engagement. Those are what they should be accomplishing. And to Shana's point, yeah, with call to actions, you should be getting clicks and clickovers to your website, and then holding the transactional pieces accountable for the actual, what you would call ROI, or conversions or purchases or book and buys. So while, yes, it is very difficult to calculate exact ROI on brand awareness, it is just another piece of the formula that it will spit out. And to challenge Scott a little bit, yeah, I agree that, employee marketing is super important, but you got to be doing both at the same time. I mean, of course, there's always going to be that demand for people that want your service, but in this day and age, when there's a million options for them to choose from, the minute you stop marketing for it is the moment that you stop growing. And you can still market and not bring on new clients, if you don't have the employees for that. So I definitely think it needs to be a duo. there, because nobody's going to want to work for a business that's not out there marketing their business. So I think it's definitely a kind of an all or nothing situation where, yes, to Scott's point, you have to be everywhere all the time, but doing it in a way that's trackable, to Shana's point, and meeting your localized goals in order to see that success.
Absolutely. And I like your other metaphor for today, digital footprint equals you. Because you're right, like people nowadays, that's why being local is so important, because they are finding you on their phone, they're checking your Instagram page, they're maybe going to your Facebook, looking at the reviews first, or they're going to that Google page and looking at the Google My Business reviews. And all of that is that digital ecosystem that people check as the first impression. So you're absolutely hit the nail on the head there with that. I definitely agree. Larisa, I know we've covered quite a bit, and each one of us has said brand awareness is a little bit ambiguous to track and quantify. But how are you calculating the ROI on brand awareness yourself?
I think, again, broken record, it really comes back to what the goals of the franchise owner is. I'm gonna take it from that standpoint. On a local level, we're very local focused. We're in about 21 states now. So if you are interested in purchasing a Ziebart franchise, please give me a call in the other 500 states, right? But
Shameless.
right, shameless plug. Lots of opportunity, obviously, for growth of the brand. But we, because we're so hyper local and where we're located, it really boils down to us, for the franchise owner, of what their goals are. And I'm going to bleed into, I know we're going to talk about reporting stack, next, and what's happening. But I will say that the way that we really think about where the opportunity lies, whether it's brand awareness or perhaps that store really needs lead generation, boils down to where the store is at, where the opportunity lies. And all of the things that everyone has said, I will say that Scott's comment about employees is true. When you think about planning against those things, you have to have the support to be able to decide where you as a franchise owner want to grow, right? So if you don't have the staff, it's going to become very difficult to maybe decide some of those or fulfill some of those growth goals that you do have. So with regards to calculating marketing ROI on brand awareness activities, we do calculate ROI on lead generation activities where we do those things, because I think we're asking a lead generation campaign to work very, very hard. We expect you to make that phone call. We expect you to send in that lead through the website. And so whereas brand awareness we can think about multiple different touch points and what's happening across that opportunity, there's definitely an opportunity to measure ROI on lead generation. From a brand awareness standpoint, we look at things in terms of trends across those three places that I talked about. The idea of growing awareness, the opportunity for the consumer to then research that brand as they've seen that message multiple times and hopefully turn into a lead for the franchise owner. We're looking right now at the right mix that makes sense. We're seeing trends across those three steps, determining where those benchmarks are and where the investment as the brand and the company falls into calculating ROI. So when we look at, our company P&L, we're looking at the percentage in total that we're spending on marketing and then equating that back to what's happening. So specifically brand awareness, I think the more, like everyone said, the more that you can look at your own trends and your own goals, not only down to your franchise owner level, but as your brand as a whole, and really understand where the sweet spot is in terms of, are you trying to acquire new customers? Are you trying to really focus on retaining customers? If you can really take an opportunity to build that backwards, you actually will see an ROI in awareness. It just takes some time, precision, and really understanding where the metrics are and where you can optimize them to make them better in the consumer funnel.
Absolutely. Really well said. So I know we've said you can track a lot and it's ambiguous at the same time, but it is true. I really like, Shana, what you said about marketing is art plus science, because I mean, it's true that the science is the data and what's coming from there. And the digital footprint is now more trackable than ever. So I think by focusing on activities, whether that is that lead gen or the funnel, as you said, Larisa, about what relates to you and what trends are important to you, and tracking that is how you're going to quantify this. So this is different for everyone. And I agree again with Scott that you need the right people there to support you in the first place to be successful. So really great feedback, everyone, for this. Larisa, I do want to start with you actually for the next question, because you did highlight it a little bit about your reporting tech stack, because we've spoken a lot about what tools are using and how you're measuring that. But I think this tech stack for the head offices at that franchisor level are really important, because it enables you to show that ROI and automate a lot. So I'd love to hear what you're doing here in terms of reporting.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've really built a larger system. We call it our store success grid, to take a look at our franchise owners' goals. So their growth goal for their store or groupings of stores, and then piggybacking it back all the way to what I had stated in the last question of how can marketing drive into those goals too. And it isn't marketing that just drives to the end goal of a franchise sales growth goal, whatever it may be for that year. There's multiple things that happen in between there, but we found that taking a look at all of those things together, and it can be a very long report, but boiling it down here first gives us an opportunity to make some decisions in every aspect of the journey, and who manages and leads those opportunities as well. Marketing and sales hand in hand where that's concerned, and then building on from there. So when we look at building a reporting tech stack, I'm going to place very high emphasis on the person as well. We recently hired a data analyst who has been very instrumental in not only helping us build the stack, but then also look at what everything means, looking at trends, creating benchmarks, showing how moving the needle on a couple other pieces will actually move the needle back to the franchise owner sales goal. And so we're really at kind of an infancy stage. But what I will say is, I think connecting the right places and being very automated about what you're doing. If you're not doing that, stop and take the time to do it. And I can be a true testament to that right now, that being able to say what your metrics are, what they mean, showing your franchise owners, showing your stakeholders within the company as well, why they're important, and taking the time to really build that reporting structure that will, one, get to the franchise owner's goals, but then two, get to your own company's goals as well, is key. And so I very firmly believe, I know there's some others on the call too, that a data analyst is someone who's a very strong opportunity in building that tech stack. The programs that you use really depend on the brand that you're in and what makes sense for you. But I highly recommend investing in the data analyst.
Yeah, I think having someone that can live and breathe this is very helpful, and helps you understand a lot of the metrics in a deeper sense. So that's great. Thank you for sharing. Madeleine, how are you building the tech stack right now when you're looking at how to report the metrics at the franchisor level?
Yeah, so I am below the franchisor level, where I'm the CMO for all of our locations in the Philadelphia area. So it's a little bit different, but being on the franchisor level and on the agency side now, I kind of have a look into, how it all works together. Realistically, it comes down to, as you're growing, do I build it or do I buy it? And that's going to be different for a lot of franchises in different phases of their growth. I've had experience from internal to consultants to, outsourced vendors, and there is no right answer for anyone. I will say that, a lot of times I think franchisors are nervous to bring on, maybe a new, if they're not building it internally, bringing on a new technology or a vendor. And the realistic thing is that they're there to help. And going back to my previous point of it, there's just so much going on now that it's almost impossible to do it all yourself, and it's certainly not scalable. So when it comes to that build or buy, I tend to be on the more of the buy side. I think that there are proven, people's jobs are solely to build tech that is going to work for you. So when it comes to a franchise where you're doing literally everything under the sun on the franchisor level down to the franchisee, it's key to bring in those partners. And the other question is, with technology, I think a lot of people get nervous of if it's human versus AI, but really it's human plus AI. So when it comes to, building a tech stack, I think look at it holistically and automate what you can automate, because the more you can automate, the more you can utilize tech to drive the manual labor or the daily operations, whether it's optimizing your SEO, your Google ads, localizing your creative. There are partners in technology out there that can do that. So then you're utilizing your people for that relationship, for that monitoring, and really making top level decisions. And I'm sure all of us have said this at one point or another, is working on the business and not in the business. So I think that's one of the most important things is, as you're building your tech stack, is realize what can be automated and don't be afraid to do that. That's one of the reasons why I moved to the agency side with Netsertive, is they've optimized all of the technology when it comes to implementing your digital ads and localizing them at scale. The technology does it for them. So now, instead of dealing with a lot of the upkeep and optimization and this is broken, this doesn't work, we're now focusing on the franchisee themselves and the dollars that are working for them. So while it may be a little bit nerve-wracking to give a vendor or a technology access to the most important pieces of your business, whether it's your marketing dollars or your franchisees, knowing that, on the greener side of the grass is being able to educate and nurture that relationship and nurture those marketing dollars, whether instead of just focusing on the dollar itself.
I think that's really well said, and thinking build it internally versus buy it, because there's a lot out there to help automate this. And I think automation is a key theme throughout everything. And I know, Larisa, you mentioned that's where the data analysts came into play, where they were able to automate that for you. Did you want to add a little bit more around that?
I did actually. There's one point too that I just, especially from an emerging franchisor standpoint too, as you're thinking about building upon the stack that you already have, do not discredit the opportunity of your point of sale and what it does, and connecting that to your marketing metrics too. I think we're always so focused on our programs and what we're doing, and tactically, what are the marketing analytics that, are we meeting them? Are they good? Are we optimizing them? But thinking about that point of sale, there's so much rich data that can come from that in terms of the customers that you already have. We made very huge decisions about our brand reintroduction based on the over 25 customer data points we have in our point of sale. So I just encourage, I would be remiss if I didn't say that as a marketer, you really have to know, understand, and use that as almost your kind of internal CMS, if you will, or CRM, where your franchise owner is concerned, because that rich piece of your business speaks a lot about what's really going on. And anywhere that marketing can connect to that in the right ways is key, and ways that you can optimize it and build it to get more data as your franchise owners grow their lifelong customer relationships as well. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you for sharing that. That's a really important point. Shana, what about you? How's that tech stack at the head office evolved? You were nodding a bit when we came to the data analyst. Do you have one internally as well?
And we do, and a very important role. And I have 13 people in the marketing team, so we have a really large internal agency structure. And it was the last position I added, but it has made a huge difference, and it is because of everything that we're talking about today. Being able to interpret all of this and track all of this, and it's a full-time job. So even being able to pull it all into one place is a full-time job, let alone analyze it. So I think what Larisa said was so smart. So I want to just add on top of that, integrations, right? So I have a great subject matter experts on my team that do a great job in helping to train and teach and support franchisees. But we have great partners on the other side who are also helping us in ways that we couldn't possibly do internally. So to bridge all of that, the integrations that we have between our partners into our POS, from our digital, then coming into our dashboards, from our lead, where we store our leads, into our emails and into our text platforms, and then into our dashboards, so we can see how those leads are being converted. We can see that's really where I think we have come to a better understanding of this data and how it's all working. We're integrating the right things and working with partners to do that into our platforms with our teams and through our analysis of all of it. That's what's really widening it all out and allowing us to have that integrated and really holistic look at brand awareness, lead generation, how it's working, what needs to be improved upon. It really does. It's helped us enormously.
Oh, really, really well said. Scott, I'm going to throw it back to you for to close us out here. How are you? Do you have a tech stack that's focusing on the ROI or reporting at the head office level, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so I've been through this a couple times with building this out with APIs and connecting everybody together. So overall, it's making sure you talk to your team, educating them on what's possible, what's not possible, what they want to see, because you're not going to want to sacrifice sales because they can't use the technology, right? So we're actually in the process right now with a brand new technology. And right now it's paper versus paperless, right? It's not good for, paperless is not good for everybody, okay? There's a happy medium you got to find, like, to make sure that everybody's comfortable with using the software. So like, this is part of it. A reporting tech stack, I conclude, is basically communicating everybody together as far as the technology part of it, the business, which is nowadays, I think, everything. So communication, tech, APIs connecting together, automation, all that stuff is relative to the business and the growth of the business, because if you're not moving and grooving and moving with new technologies, you're fastly falling behind, right? In my opinion. But building your tech stack is all catered to your customers, of course, but all catered to your employment, everybody that's a part of the organization. So APIs need to be in sync. Everybody needs to understand what the repercussions are of not having this information, not uploading a photo with a note on it for a contract. They're going to have to go back out to a customer that's 4 hours away. How much does that cost you? I think everything is involved with this. I mean, everything.
Yeah.
This is a huge question. We could talk a lot more about this, but I know I'm very boring. So I'm just going to say, making sure that everybody's connected together, making sure everybody's on the same page and what is expected out of how we handle customers, how their experience is, and how the employment experience is, making sure they're not banging their heads against the wall saying, hey, I'm going to quit because I can't figure this out. I think we need to make sure that there's someone there to answer their questions. We need to make sure that there's someone there to be there for them. That's my biggest thing.
Absolutely. And I think when we talk about this tech stack today, each one of you brought a really great point, and that when we're looking at the tech stack to bring into that head office, it not only combines technology with the data, but also the personnel, which Scott, I know is a big point for you about the people, because, both Larisa and Shana have the data analyst. That's such a crucial part to delivering the tech stack and understanding what that means and automating. So this really brings all points that we've discussed really to a head. So thank you everyone for sharing. I'm going to go to our last question of the day, which I think ties a lot of this together, which highlights how to take control of the data across the franchise brand, and how do you make that correlate with what your goals are as a business overall. And I know each one of you is in such different industries, so I think we'll hopefully get some really interesting answers. So Madeleine, do you want to start us off here?
Sure. Yeah, loaded question. I think the biggest thing is when you're bringing on franchisees, and this will trickle down to your client and employee side too, is making sure that they're a right fit for your business. You need to educate and really drive home that the individual, whether it's they're buying one unit or a multi-location, their marketing activities are going to raise the tides for everyone. So it's really the individual marketing activities of each location that is creating the brand. And then the National Advertising Fund is a layer on top of that. I think that there gets a lot of confusion between, well, the franchise is the franchise and they should be doing everything and that's where my success is going to come. No, these are small businesses, and their marketing activities really need to be the ones that are driving the brand. Outside of that, I think, you got to be aligned on business outcomes. You can't, as a franchisor, be saying, we're going to grow over all the states and Canada, and then having your franchisees think that you're only trying to grow in a certain region. So there needs to be a lot of transparency, a lot of communication when it comes to your whole network. And then, when it comes to dollars spent, to everyone's point, make sure you have people that know what the data means. Get those data analysts, get those people that can coach on it. Make sure you have franchisees that get it, that are on board and understand where changes need to be made. And same thing with your vendors. Not everyone's going to be a right fit, but there are right fits out there. And so once you have everyone kind of in place and on board with that, making sure that you're constantly evolving with your data, you're ready to optimize. And like I said, as your franchisees are on board and doing that, and your home office staff is coaching to that, and reacting with, the trends and the evolution of this marketing and digital space, everyone's going to kind of come together and your brand is going to grow.
I'm writing that down. I think that's really, really well said. I mean, you should see my notebook, guys. I have 2 full pages already. I think everyone's sharing really great feedback. I think I like how you tied that in with your earlier point about, local business, or the franchisees are local businesses, because you're absolutely right. You have the franchisee marketing campaigns, and then you have the national marketing campaigns on top of that. And synthesizing that all together is a really key part of this. So thank you for sharing. Shana, I know as Madeleine said, it's a loaded question, but I would love to hear your perspective here.
Yeah, I really do believe that the customization on a market by market basis is one of the most important things that we can glean from the data, and be able to support our franchisees with the right creative, the right copy, the right points of differentiation, the right competitive information. We have to do this market by market. There is no easy shortcut to getting this done. That's franchising. That's a part of what we all do, right? And it's what makes it challenging. And for me, it's what makes it exciting and why I love it so much. But just what Madeleine said is right on. And to me, that just means that transparency and inclusion for everybody, right? So transparency and inclusion with people. So the right franchisees, the right people internally, with partners that can do things that you can't possibly do yourself, that can do it better, more cost effectively. And then processes. You have to have the dashboards. You have to have the right the right ways of doing things. Processes take time, but they're so important to being able to assist and support the franchisees on their objectives to make the money that they're looking to make. If we have the right people, the right processes, the right partners, and we're all transparent, we can support them. We can do what we need to do to help get them where they want to be.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with that. Scott, how are you taking control of the data and leveraging that for marketing?
Well, I don't work as much anymore for franchisees. I used to, and the biggest insight I can give you is nationally known, locally owned. You have to make sure that they're investing enough money to where it makes sense for you to continue their franchise experience. I mean, they have to invest money in themselves in order for them to succeed. They can't just ride your coattails as a franchise company. They have to invest money in their local markets to continue their success as a franchise. So that's what I know. And I know you have all the picture there is all across the world there, but I mean, overall, it makes sense for anybody to invest into their own, what they're investing into. So if they're not going to be throwing, hey, it costs $250,000 to invest into a company, I'm not going to invest $30,000 into marketing activities for the year. I mean, it's got to be your people. And I know I keep on moving to that, but the people are the ones that grow you. No one else. It's your customers, it's your people, it's how you interact with people. So.
Absolutely. I think people is the core. I know Shana brought that into play. It's the people that you're investing in, both at the franchisee level, who you're bringing on board, and Madeleine touched upon that too, but also who you're having at the head office level to help you create dashboards or bring on tech and help you drive towards your KPI. So I think that's really well said. Larisa, to close us out here, how are you taking control of the data?
Yeah, I think a couple points on this question. Number one, just like everybody else said, collaboration is key with your franchise owners to understand their goals, understand what they're doing from a local standpoint. But I will step back and we talk about how to take control over data. I think it's really important to educate your franchise owners on why data is so important, not only clean data, but complete data. I go back to the point of sale conversation that I had, I think with the last question. That is really so much of the hub of what you can learn about what's happening with your business, that if you don't have complete, accurate, and clean data, you can't make decisions about the future of your company without that. So educating on that right up front when a franchise owner comes into your system, but also continuing to re-educate through the life cycle of that franchise owner. Very, very important to do. And I think that will help with this conversation too. I also believe that you really need to educate them on the connections that you can make for them from a local marketing standpoint and what you're doing from a national as well. If they can understand that a decision that they might be making on a local store marketing campaign, how you can support them in tracking those results will also help you tell a better story too. So making sure that they're educated in what they can do, as well as, and lastly, like set it up for them. They didn't become franchise owners to be marketers. That's why we're all here. So they really shouldn't have a lot of work to do in this aspect, but educating on the opportunities to track, why it's important, but then also when you are finally getting that, customer or new customer in and you spent that money on them and you're thinking about the experience, take the time to make sure that if you do have, it doesn't really matter, freestanding retail, service-based, home, it's all the same. You have to have the data on the customer. And I think that that's very important to make sure you take the time to educate franchise owners on.
Absolutely. And that's, part of why the franchisees come on board in a franchise organization. It's obviously they're buying into the model, but the support that you give them as well to make them successful, whether that is setting benchline metrics and bringing them up to that, like we discussed earlier, or helping them understand and educate them on the pieces there. So thank you everyone for your input today. It was really insightful. I got, as you saw, like a lot of notes taken today, a lot of really great insight from each and every one of you from such vastly different industries. And to quickly summarize, if I can, and anyone can join in as well, we've seen the biggest transformation in the past 10 years in digital marketing, specifically in the franchise space. As Scott said, from paper to digital. I'm like, you should trademark that, Scott, I think, because that's a great piece. And then you're not only in the digital space, but there's so many things to track on digital, whether that's social, whether that's pay-per-click, like SEO, all of that, choosing what metrics are your North Star metrics or your life raft metrics, as Madeleine said, and then bringing in the data scientists like both Shana and Larisa have to analyze that and to make an automated tech stack, and then to control that, whether that's at that head office data or making it easily digestible back down to the franchisee level. So I think we did cover a lot, but I'm really thankful for each and every one of you for joining. If anyone has any questions today, you can, this is your time. You can write it in the chat box, or you can write it in the question and answer box. But I know one of the biggest reasons people come is to learn directly from each and every one of our panelists, because you are doing this on a daily basis. You are the experts. So we have everyone's LinkedIn here. And on our previous roundtable that we hosted, this was, I think, the favorite part of, because you're able to network with each other and ask your questions that maybe you don't want to ask in a public forum. So feel free to take your phones out and scan these. But with that, I did want to thank each and every one of you today for your time. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks, Raakkel.
of course, of course. So if you have, I don't see, I think, any questions coming through, so definitely feel free to scan the QR codes and keep note, because we know these roundtables have been really valuable for our franchises to learn about directly from each and every one of you as experts in the area. So we have our next roundtable scheduled for April 12th, I believe it is. Yep. So you can scan this as well and register for the next one. So with that, I just want to, again, thank you each and every one of our panelists today, and hope to see you on the next call.